So now we'll look at Chapter 2 of Graham Swift's Waterland, and Chapter 2 is called About the End of History. And firstly, the chapter title is referring to the fact that the main protagonist is a history teacher, and he is going to leave, and you will see why very soon. He has to leave his job, and history classes are being cut back as well. So on the one hand, it means the end of history at school. But I want you also to realise that there was a book called The End of History and the Last Man by a political scientist called Fukuyama, who predicted that we have already passed a certain point where Western liberal democracies are becoming universalized and Western values are becoming prevalent all over the globe. And in this sense, history is finishing, history is ending. A lot of people say that history is always the history of war and conflict, and I suppose he's claiming in some kind of way that we're going to have less and less and less conflict anyway, because history is finishing, history is ending, and Western liberal democracy has triumphed. And he spoke about this starting with the French Revolution, and this is important because we'll certainly have that referenced in this text as well. Okay? So we start with children, children, children. And I want you to think here of friends, Romans, countrymen. We very often see three nouns repeated. In fact, if you go back to chapter 1, you see fairy tale words, fairy tale advice. But we lived in a fairy tale place, and fairy tales are very important in this story. But notice the word fairy tale repeated 3 times. Well, we have exactly the same in chapter 2. Children, children who will inherit the world. Children, for always, even though you were 15, 16, 17, candidates for that appeasing term young adults. Now notice this is actually an A positive, candidates for that appeasing term young adults, because we are renaming 15, 16 and 17-year-olds candidates for that appeasing term young adults. I know it doesn't say year olds, but we mean 15, 16, 17-year-olds, and he's saying that these kids, you know, these 15, 16, 17-year-olds, they're already old enough candidates for that appeasing term, young adults. And I might also mention that appeasement on any history course in the UK makes you think about Hitler and Neville Chamberlain, because Neville Chamberlain had a policy of appeasing Hitler. He didn't complain when Hitler, I think it was invaded Sudetenland. I think he invaded somewhere in the modern-day Czech Republic, or maybe Slovakia, but I think it's Czech Republic. And he didn't complain because he wanted to appease Hitler. That was his policy. And so it has a very negative connotation. And when he says that appeasing term young adults, it sounds as though you're calling them young adults, but really you think they're children. I addressed you silently as children. Children, before whom I have stood for 32 years in order to unravel the mysteries of the past, but before whom I am to stand no longer. Listen one last time to your history teacher. Okay, and notice the before whom, repeated twice. Before whom I have stood for 32 years in order to unravel the mysteries of the past, but before whom I am to stand no longer. Listen one last time to your history teacher.